A man bought his dream house for half its market value. He didn't ask why. 3 weeks later, he was dead, and what investigators found in the walls would change how an entire town thought about the house next door. This isn't a ghost story. This is something far worse, because every piece of it is true, and versions of this same nightmare are still happening right now, in quiet neighborhoods across America, hidden behind freshly painted doors and motivated seller signs. Picture this. A small town, the kind with one stoplight and a diner where everyone knows your name. In the middle of it sits a beautiful Victorian house, wraparound porch, original woodwork, the kind of home that should sell in days. Instead, it sat on the market for 6 years. 6 years, and 4 different families moved in. 6 years, and 4 different families moved out within months, refusing to explain why, refusing to even discuss it with neighbors. The 5th family didn't get the chance to leave. But that's not the craziest part. Because when investigators finally pieced together what was happening inside the house, they discovered it wasn't a haunting in the way anyone expected. It was something engineered. Something built into the very architecture of the home by the man who constructed it nearly a century earlier, a man the town had quietly forgotten, and for very good reason. Let's go back to the beginning, because to understand what happened in that house, you have to understand the man who designed it. In the early 1900s, a wealthy and reclusive builder arrived in town with more money than anyone could explain. He didn't work in finance. He didn't inherit it. He simply appeared, bought land at the edge of town, and began constructing what locals assumed was just an unusually large family home. What they didn't know was that this builder had previously worked on at least 3 properties in 2 other states. Properties that, decades later, would all become infamous for the exact same pattern of unexplained tenant deaths. Now consider this. In an era before background checks, before the internet, before any kind of cross-state record sharing, a man could simply move from town to town, building the same nightmare into different houses, and walk away clean every single time. No one connects the dots. No one even thinks to look. And that's when investigators uncovered the real secret, hidden somewhere nobody expected. Behind the walls of the home's east wing, sealed since construction, was a network of narrow passageways. Not for storage. Not for servants. These corridors ran directly behind the bedroom walls, with small vents disguised as decorative ironwork, allowing someone standing inside the walls to see, and hear, everything happening in the rooms beyond. Imagine sleeping in your own bedroom, completely unaware that less than 18 inches separate your bed from a hidden passage built specifically to watch you. This wasn't an accident of old architecture. It was deliberate. The vents lined up perfectly with every major room in a house. The passages connected to a hidden staircase that led down into a sub-basement that didn't appear on any blueprint filed with the town. For nearly 100 years, that basement simply didn't exist on paper. What happened down there is the part that made even hardened investigators go quiet. But to understand the full scope of it, you need to understand why none of the families who fled the house ever talked about what drove them out. Because here's the disturbing truth. In 3 of the 4 cases, families weren't running from something supernatural. They were running from something they couldn't explain rationally. Items moved, doors locked from the inside, a presence that felt like being watched every single hour of the day. Classic haunted house symptoms. Except now we know there was nothing supernatural happening at all. There was a person, possibly more than one, living inside the walls. Let that settle for a second, because it gets darker. When the hidden basement was finally excavated, investigators found evidence of long-term habitation. Not days, not weeks, years. There were food wrappers dating across multiple decades. There were journals, and reading even a few lines from them, according to one detective involved in the case, was the single most disturbing thing in a 20-year career. The journals revealed something investigators never expected. This wasn't one person's secret. It was a system passed down. The original builder had trained someone to take over the hidden space after he was gone. And that person trained someone else. A literal inheritance of access to a stranger's home, maintained in total secrecy for nearly a century, hiding in plain sight. Inside the walls of a house that kept getting resold to unsuspecting families who had no idea what came with her property. Think about the sheer audacity of that business model, because make no mistake, this became a business. Local rumors, later partially confirmed through financial records, suggested that whoever controlled access to the hidden passages was selling something even more disturbing: information. Personal details about the families living in the house, sold to people willing to pay for leverage, blackmail material harvested simply by listening through the walls for months at a time. A surveillance operation, hidden inside a family home, profiting off the most private moments of the people who trusted those walls to keep them safe. And here's the statistic that should genuinely unsettle you. A 2019 study on residential surveillance crimes found that the average hidden camera or listening device in a private home goes undetected for over 2 years. 2 years of someone living a life completely unaware they're being watched. Now imagine that same exposure, except instead of a hidden camera that could eventually be found, it's an entire architectural system. Built directly into the bones of the house, designed from day one to be undetectable, because the person who built the home also designed exactly how to hide from anyone looking for it. But that's still not the part that changes everything. Because when the final family moved in, the family whose disappearance finally exposed this entire operation, investigators discovered something that suggested the person inside the walls wasn't just watching anymore. They were interacting. Small objects were moved with calculated precision, just enough to make the family question their own sanity, but never enough to prove anything was wrong. Doors that lock themselves were later found to have modified mechanisms accessible only from inside the hidden passage. Even strange tapping sounds reported by terrified children turned out to be deliberate, coming from inside the very walls those children slept against. This wasn't haunting by accident. It was psychological manipulation, engineered with architectural precision, sustained over months, designed to push a family toward panic, toward instability, toward isolation from the community around them. Because an isolated family doesn't call for help. An isolated family disappears quietly. And at that exact moment,